Okay, we're recording.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Appreciate everyone taking the time to come out here this evening and discuss the Lawson Road pedestrian crossing of a Tuscarora Creek project with us. My name's Phil Jones. I'm the Assistant Director of Capital Projects. With me here tonight to talk to you all is Renee LaFollette, the Director of Public Works and Capital Projects, Christine Rowe, Senior Capital Projects Engineer, Karen Franklin, Senior Capital Projects Engineer, Matt Kaiser with RK&K, our engineering consultant, David Black with RK&K, and John McDowell with RK&K. So tonight we're going to be starting with a presentation, and then we'll follow with questions and answers. All non-presenters are automatically muted, and we'll go through the process to unmute yourself later in the presentation when we get to those questions and answers. We're going to be recording tonight's meeting so that it can be posted on the website after the presentation for those of your neighbors that are unable to be here with us tonight. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the project, what we're going to do is just a brief overview. So forgive me for those of you who are familiar with what we're doing. We'll just take it one step at a time here. So we'll go through the location, the project goals, and overall status. First off the bat, as you can see on this map, the project is located between the existing Lawson Road cul-de-sacs on either end of Tuscarora Creek. There was previously a roadway crossing of Tuscarora Creek at this location where the arrow is located on your map. And this previous crossing allowed for pedestrian access across the creek and linked up the Beauregard Estates community with the W&OD Trail on the other side. Here is a photo that was taken this past year, which shows how it is currently. As you can see from this photo, the existing crossing has been completely removed. This is not news for any of you that live out there. The number of metal pipes that were in the stream previously have been removed due to safety concerns. And the primary goal of this project as we move through the design and then construction phase is to reconstruct this crossing and restore this important pedestrian link for the Beauregard Estates community. So just some general project goals, kind of as, again, we're going through the design process here. What are we trying to accomplish? First and foremost, we want to provide a safe pedestrian and bicycle access across the creek. We'll talk more in a moment about some of the design-specific things we're doing to provide that safe crossing. Secondly, the project has a goal to have no increase in the 100-year water surface elevation for the FEMA floodplain. We know this is of critical importance here for this project due to history of flooding in this area and the close proximity of a lot of the homes to the floodplain limits. So the good news is currently with the detailed hydraulic modeling that RK&K has done for us, we're showing that we are meeting this goal with the design and are not increasing the 100-year water surface elevation. And then finally, in addition to these other goals, the project will repair and stabilize an area of channel bank erosion that is currently present upstream of Lawson Road. And in a minute, when I pull up a map, I'll point out with greater specificity the location and exactly what we're going to be doing to make that channel bank improvements. All right, so just a brief project status update and schedule moving forward. For those of you that have been involved in this thus far, you know that the target date has been spring 2023 for construction completion. Here, as we sit here today, we are on target to meet that date. And that's very encouraging, and RK&K has put in a lot of hard work to get us to this point. 60% construction plans have been reviewed by town staff, and our engineer has begun work on addressing comments and preparing 90% plans for further review. For those of you that are not familiar with the process, it normally goes 60% construction plans, 90%, and then 100% prior to plan approval and ultimately bidding the project for construction. In addition to the engineering plans, the detailed floodplain modeling that I referenced a moment ago is currently under review by Town of Leesburg staff and should be shortly moving to federal FEMA review. FEMA review is required for any work of this nature that's done within a FEMA regulated floodplain to basically prove that you're not having any adverse impacts to adjacent properties by the work that you're doing. So all of these elements lead us towards essentially an early spring 2023 start to construction, and we generally feel that the construction duration is going to basically be one season, which would basically be a start of spring start and hopefully be done by the end of spring in terms of construction completion. So for those of you again that have not been involved in kind of the phasing and discussions up until now. The proposed crossing that we're proposing at Lawson Road is a low water crossing. This essentially means that it's designed to convey basically your dry, non-rainy day creek flows, as well as flow rates from small storm events through a series of culverts that will be located underneath of the pedestrian crossing. If you get a larger rainstorm event, larger than a regular, getting above like a 1 or 2 year storm event, it's going to flow over top of the low water crossing. The intent there is to keep the pedestrian crossing as low profile as possible, meaning not have a large dam embankment that could then create a backing up of water, which would lead to a rise in the floodplain elevation. This low water crossing has that benefit where we're not creating that adverse impact to adjacent properties for a flood condition. The Lawson Road concept is being implemented with an example low water crossing of the W&OD Trail located a short distance downstream, and that's what you see on your screen right now. So this is a good example for those of you to kind of visualize what we're proposing with a couple noticeable and important differences. The W&OD Trail crossing is approximately 10 feet wide, and what we're proposing at Lawson Road is 20 feet wide. And we're proposing it to be wider to give additional pedestrian and bicycle safety features, basically additional room for recovery and just room for safe crossing across the creek. In addition, the Lawson Road crossing will have 7 culverts in parallel conveying water underneath rather than just the 3 shown here. And what we're proposing at Lawson Road will utilize concrete pipes that will be their upstream and downstream ends will conform to the side slope. What you're seeing here on the screen at the W&OD Trail are plastic pipes that are in essence projecting out from the crossing. So it's going to have a cleaner, mitered look to the sides, and it'll be all concrete. All right, what you're seeing up on your screen now is a cross section of the proposed trail at Tuscarora Creek. And when I say cross section, what I mean is if you were to be standing on the Beauregard Estates side of the creek, looking at the trail, and you were to cut it in half, this is what you would see. So the left side of your screen would be upstream and right side is downstream. And the main takeaways I want to point out to you here, again, is that we're providing 20 feet total of concrete surface above the pipes as we cross the creek. 10 feet of that will be the marked trail, and there will be 5-foot concrete shoulders on either side. And again, that gives extra space for safe passage and recovery space as we're trying to promote that safety across the creek. And again, as you can see here, the proposed crossing will consist of 3 36-inch circular pipes and 4 30-inch circular pipes to convey, again, those smaller rainfall events underneath the crossing. All right, what you can see up on your screen here is the 60% design layout that the RK&K submitted to the town. We'll walk through some critical design elements, but the one caveat I'll throw on here is we're obviously at 60% design. Things are subject to change as we move through 90 and 100%. We feel good about the critical elements here, namely the trail alignment and project limits, but I just throw that caveat out there as we move through the design refinement. So I'm going to go ahead and circle a couple elements here as I talk. Here in red in the center is the culvert crossing that we noted, and where the stream actually crosses the trail. So those are the 7 culverts in parallel. The concrete trail right above the stream is the 20-foot that we noted. It's going to be 10-foot wide everywhere else along the alignment. We don't need the extra shoulder because we're not dealing with the water on either side. Up here at the top of your screen, the other location that I'm circling is the bank stabilization that will be occurring at the rear of the 619 Beauregard Drive. That is the only property at this point in time that we're anticipating needing easement for. That is certainly, again, subject to change as the design is refined, but our town procurement officer in terms of land rights will be reaching out to that property owner later in the design phase once we nail down exactly what easement limits we need. All right, so some additional details on the bank stabilization that we noted. On the left is the existing erosion as it is out there today. And you can see it's kind of steep slopes that as we get high water events will lead to erosion. What RK&K and the town are proposing is what's referred to as bioengineering bank preventment. And essentially what that is geotextile fabric interwoven with layers of brush. And Arcane K's analysis has essentially shown that this kind of bank stabilization will hold up against the kinds of velocities and shear forces that we see in the stream in this area. So that is what's being proposed within the limits of that cross-hatched area I circled for you all just a moment ago. All right, so some upcoming council items of note. The town is going through our annual capital improvement program update and approval. The town-wide CIP is set to be approved in March 2022. And as part of that update, we are increasing the total project cost and funding for this project. It's moved up to just under 1.5 million from about 1 million that it was about a year ago. The primary factors for that are obviously inflation that we're seeing in the economy as a whole, especially in the construction industry, and accounting for some additional design efforts that will have to take place after construction to verify everything is as it was supposed to be. So those are kind of some of the elements leading to that increased cost and should set us up well for the construction and bidding phase. In addition to that, we have to go through what's called a special exception for this project. That is essentially a zoning ordinance requirement for the placement of fill within the 100-year floodplain, which we are obviously doing for this project. We do not anticipate any issues with that approval process, but it does have to go through Planning Commission and get Town Council voted approval. So what you will be seeing out on site sometime later this year are advertisements around the site for the public hearing associated with that special exception process. So when you see that signage, that's what it's for. All right, so next steps. We are anticipating 100% plans to be approved sometime in the summer, fall of 2022 timeframe. The floodplain modeling, we're expecting FEMA approval approximately in fall of this year. And that should set us up well to have the project out to bid sometime over winter 2022, 2023. So that would be the end of this year, wrapping into 2023. And again, those set us up well to have construction begin sometime early spring 2023. We would anticipate to have another one of these neighborhood meetings during that winter prior to construction. And that'll, we'll obviously be able to talk through the approved plans at that point in time, as well as some of the details of construction that will be of interest to the community as we move through the construction process at that time. So with that, the formal presentation is complete. Basically what you're seeing on your screen currently are instructions for raising your hand. And the way we're going to go through this is for those of you that are joining on an electronic device, you will raise your hand, and Christine, who's on here with us for the town side, will specify your name, and you will unmute yourself and be able to ask your questions. We do ask that when you are done speaking, you turn off or put down your electronic hand so that we know you don't have any further questions. And for those of you that are calling in, I'm not sure if there's any call-in only users, but we will unmute you one at a time to give you a chance to ask any questions you may have as well. So with that, do we have any? We'll give folks a little bit of time here to raise their hand, but has anybody started to raise their hand?
Yes, we have Pam Chopert. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, and I'm going to unmute you. Okay, you're unmuted.
Hi, Christine. Thank you. And thank you, Philip, for the overview. Appreciate that. I had a question, and I joined 5 minutes late, so you may have addressed it, about how you'll stop traffic from going across the bridge on both sides. What will be at the end of the cul-de-sac on the Beauregard side and at the end of the walkway on the other side?
Right, so that's one of the elements we are fine tuning. At this point in time, we're anticipating bollards on either side to prevent access from vehicles. And you're absolutely correct that the plan is to have no vehicular crossings of the creek at this location. So bollards at this point in time are what we're proposing. Okay.
A couple other questions I had too. We had talked about this project obtaining federal funding through Wexton. Has that not happened? Did that ever go through?
That has not come through at this point in time, and we're not anticipating having to go through any of those additional steps that would have been tied to that money. So the answer in short is no.
Thank you. And I have one other question. It looked like there was some more cement area after you crossed from the Beauregard side across the bridge. It looked like there was like a little bit of cement going over, maybe behind where the I don't know if those are the overhead lines, the power lines, but it just looked like there was some additional things there. At one point in time, the mayor had talked about a park on that side of the crossing. Is there any, are you leaving space or doing anything to put in a town park in this area?
So the town essentially owns all of the property behind the Beauregard Estates residential property. So what you'll see on the screen here, and I'll kind of circle the labels. The town of Leesburg owns all of this land, you know, we'll call it around the stream in this forested area. So that technically, as it is today, is within a town park. It's a passive park. At this point in time, I don't know of any other plans to develop that with any active recreational features or anything to that effect, but yeah, so I don't know of any plans currently to further develop that park space.
We can work on that project afterwards, Phil. Thank you for answering my question today. It's
You're
good to see
welcome.
you.
The other part of your question, the access points that you pointed out that look like additional concrete are access points for our utilities department to maintain the sanitary sewer line that runs along and across the creek.
That's what it was. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, I misunderstood your question, so I apologize. And those are going to be actually gravel as well. So kind of these little stubs, which is what you're referring to, those will be gravel.
Thank you.
And Pam, if your comments have been addressed, if you can press the hand button again so that it's not raised. Thank you. Okay, so now we have a question from Sandra Dudley. So Sandra, I'm unmuting you.
Hi, so I'm the property with the circle behind it for the, you mentioned and you'd need an easement. I'm just curious on what the plan, at one point, I know we were told that any work on the creek bank would be, you'd be entering through the actual creek itself or from the other side. So has anything changed with that? Do we?
No, so the plan still is to enter the area from the creek side, meaning the town-owned property would be the bulk of the access. We would need an easement to do the physical work on your property. The town is not allowed to come and do land disturbing activities or any improvements on private property without an easement.
Okay, great. And do you have a timing update for when that work would start?
It would be the same contract as the rest of the work. So the timeframes and schedules that we're talking about for Lawson Road would be the same for those bank improvements.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Did that address all of your questions?
It did. Thank you.
Okay. So now we have a question from John Drury. So I will. John, you've been unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Two questions. One, I'm at 621, so I'm between 619 and the cul-de-sac. I caught the engineers when they were doing the surveying, and it looked like a little bit of my property has also washed away. I'm assuming that there are no plans to do any reinforcement of that at this time.
That's correct. The limits as they're shown on the screen in terms of the crosshatch is the limit of the bank stabilization that is proposed.
Okay, great. The other question I have concerns the cul-de-sac. There's a trail that comes around, and right now one of them hooks up to what was the old crossing. The other trail sort of dead ends in the mud there. Will that trail be continued all the way around the cul-de-sac?
That is our plan currently, and that is one change that you'll see from the 60% design on the screen, which is we are currently joining to one end of that trail around the cul-de-sac, and we're working through with Arcane K, and in all likelihood we will be adding that second connection. So both sides will be joining into the trail.
Yeah, because the second connection, you have to kind of cross over where it drains off of the cul-de-sac, so that makes it a little more interesting.
Understood. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We have Sandra Dudley. That's another question. So you're now unmuted.
Great. I just thought of another question now that John brought up the sidewalk going around the cul-de-sac. Are there any plans to have lighting down there? I mean, I know there's lighting coming down Lawson, but
No, there is no plans to add lighting as part of this project.
okay. Maybe something for consideration, just teeing it up. I hadn't thought about it until I just anticipate this is going to obviously create a lot more activity and foot traffic down there, et cetera. I don't know. It's just thought I would tee that up as maybe something that should be considered.
That's something we can look at. And with this primarily being a connection to the W&OD Trail, which closes at dark, that at dusk, that was part of the reason for not looking at the lighting. But you do bring up a very valid point.
Yeah, and there's previously, there has been suspicious activity down there at times, and I think the more we make this more inviting, the more that might invite more of that. And so well-lit areas might be a safety thing that we should think about.
Sandy, I don't know if you can hear me. This is Pam again, but
Yeah.
I would ask that the town talk to the town police about patrolling that area and about, having to go down there and ask cars to move that park in that area. So I agree with you totally. Good.
Good,
point.
perfect. Thanks, Pam.
Yeah, I would request that they talk to the police department.
Okay. Sandra, is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So it doesn't look like anybody else's hand is raised. Do we want to move on? There's no questions in the Q&A, so do we want to move on to unmuting people on the phone?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So Claudia Wolfson, you're first. I'll unmute you. If you have any questions, let us know. If not, just let us know if you want to pass, or if you don't see anything, I'll just give it a couple seconds.
I'll
Okay.
pass. Thank you.
So next up is John Jens. You're being unmuted.
No questions. Thank you.
Next up is Marianne Deberbieri. You're unmuted.
No questions. Thank you.
And it looks like everybody else is joining in, not on the phone.
Just to follow up on one of the points that Phil made during the presentation is the additional funding that is going to be requested for this project is part of the proposed 23 capital improvement program. And that will be at public hearing with town council on March 8th. At this point in time, there's no reason to think that this funding would be in jeopardy because we have debt capacity to be able to handle it, and it has not been questioned thus far.
If there is, how will we know if there is, a possibility that it could get like, again, I don't want to mobilize our neighborhood if we don't need to. How would we get notification if there was some issue with this project?
If we sense that there's some issue, I will know on the 22nd of the month, that is the work session with council where we will be discussing the capital improvement program at a staff level with council. That is just the work session. So we will have an idea at that time where this project and others that have requested additional funding stand. And we can have Phil reach out to this group after we get through that meeting so that we can let you know where the project stands based on that.
We're so appreciative of you both. Thank you.
All right, so with that, the town staff and Arcane K will stick around for a couple extra minutes in case any other questions pop up, but that concludes our presentation tonight. So thanks everybody for taking some time out of your day to let us catch you up on the progress.
Thanks again. Appreciate everybody's time tonight. Bye-bye.
Of course.
Bill, we have a question from Melissa Ailman. I'm unmuting her now.
Hello, I live on Lawson Road. I'm a resident and I just joined a little bit late. I apologize. Is this a slide deck that can be shared?
There is, and we are also recording this meeting, so we're going to post it to the project website, so you can view the recording, and we're also going to post the slides there as well.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, so Christine, I think you can turn off the recording.
Okay.